Greetings, comrades. As we all know by now, the leader of the Libyan Jamahiriya, Muammar al-Gaddafi, was killed on Thursday in his hometown of Sirte by forces loyal to the National Transitional Council. An armed conflict in Libya appears, for the time being at least, to have ended. The National Transitional Council is at present in control of pretty much the entire country. Now, as comrades are aware, I was never really willing to support Gaddafi unconditionally. However, we all recognise that a NATO victory in any country is detrimental to the fortunes of the international working class. The opportunities to further plunder and exploit the Libyan workers' resources and labour power will most likely be a shot of life to big capital. But will it be enough to save the Western bourgeoisie from its inevitable decline? Now, in order to fully assess the effects of Gaddafi's policies whilst in power, the level of support he enjoyed requires both intensive research on the subject as well as time to allow the dust from the conflict to settle and for some of the facts to start coming out. And one of the reasons I was dubious about supporting Gaddafi unconditionally is the sheer level of propaganda coming out of both sides during the war. The facts have been heavily distorted by the media. Objective reporting on the war was practically non-existent, and reports are often contradictory, including, past records of what life actually was like in Libya. Competing human rights groups have refuted each other's findings. For example, the estimates on the death toll from the conflict range from between 2,000 to 30,000, with some pro-Gaddafi sources even quoting 60,000 casualties. Still, for the time being, I will try and draw a few conclusions for now, with the warning that I may later change my assessment when I've done more research and when more facts come out. Firstly, it is clear that Gaddafi's rule provided some of the highest standards of living in the whole of Africa, apparently providing affordable housing, clean water, free education, and healthcare, although I cannot speak for the quality of these services, and some of the Libyans that I've been fortunate enough to actually talk to told me there's a lot of kind of bribery and corruption involved with the provision of these services. He also raised the stature of women comparatively in society and allowed workers control of small industry through self-management. And there are some notable achievements, the Great Man-Made River and other such ambitious projects. However, Libya's dependence on oil and lack of diversified industry led to pretty high youth unemployment, and while it's clear that some of Gaddafi's policies were favourable to the working class, how successful they were, how effective they were in practice requires much more scrutiny. They certainly alienated sections of society with bourgeois aspirations, which led to a kind of a brain drain, similar to what we saw in the Eastern Bloc. Hence Libya's dependence on imported labour, which probably contributed to the acts of racism by rebel forces during the war. Gaddafi also made many catastrophic mistakes during his rule, and his ideology is deeply flawed and contradictory. I mean, despite rallying for a classless society, world revolution, he actually maintained a class society, a tribal society. He promoted and integrated religion into his rule. He had a lot of very reactionary opinions, damaging the cause of working class emancipation. And at the same time, while he did fund some genuinely revolutionary groups, he also funded some very highly reactionary groups. Put it this way, he funded the New People's Army, which is a Maoist army in the Philippines, but he also funded the British National Party, one of the most openly racist, semi-mainstream parties in Britain, one of the biggest threats to workers and stability in Britain as we know it. Now, I do not expect any of the beneficial aspects of the Jamahiriya system to be retained. I think, as with the former Soviet bloc, the new rulers are likely to throw the baby out with the bathwater and for material standards of living to drop significantly whilst the country recovers from the NATO bombardments and the effects of the war genuinely. However, as I said, I'm in no position to pass judgment on that until I've done much more extensive research. Gaddafi and the state are gone, so let us look now to the real struggle in Libya, the future. Ever since the NATO attack began, it seemed pretty inevitable to me that they and their allies would be victorious over the Libyan state, and hence it was my belief that the working class is the only agent capable of defeating imperialism in Libya. Not Gaddafi, not the state, but the independent action of the workers. This is why I stated in previous videos that the first objective should be peace between the two warring factions, and for the armed working class to assert its own power over the bourgeoisie. However, with the populace loyal to both sides swept up in vulgar nationalism, this was always going to be pretty unlikely. Therefore, the long march to victory for the working people will face opposition from the currently new ruling circles, who are likely to actually begin tearing themselves apart over, who was a member of the former regime, what did you do during the revolution, etc., etc. Truth and reconciliation, all that shit. But when compared to the other uprising in the Arab Spring, Libya stands out in unique. Sorry, let me start again. When compared to the other uprisings in the Arab Spring, Libya stands out as unique. Firstly, because there were no NGOs or parties in Libya under Gaddafi. All permitted organisations were integrated into the state. And even today, only one political party has been declared. This means that, unlike in Tunisia, Egypt, Syria, and Yemen, etc., whom all have active opposition groups, it's difficult to identify the various political tendencies present in Libya, as well as the number of adherents to each. We can get a rough idea of how many Islamists there are in Egypt, socialists there are in Syria, or liberals in Tunisia, but who knows how many of these there are in Libya. I believe the supporters of the NTC at this time are rallying around a sense of broad nationalism, and there seems to be strains of bourgeois liberalism as well as Islamism to varying degrees. We're going to be competing with each other for the kind of mass support. And time will only tell what kind of political struggles lie ahead in the attempts to forge a new country. The only party declared so far is the Democratic Party, and I'll post a link to their manifesto in the description box. But in short, it's a kind of bourgeois liberal party, kind of free market, etc., etc. Now, interestingly, this party is actually very opposed to the former Gaddafi elements in the National Transitional Council, especially its chairman, Jalil, I think his name is, calls them opportunists, and they also accuse the former military commander of the rebel forces, the so-called National Liberation Army, Abdel Fattah Yunus, as actually being an agent of Gaddafi after he was assassinated by some of the rebel troops. The tension between rebels and former government officials and supporters may well be a source of conflict in the future. Also of concern is the persecution of black Libyans and migrants, the pogroms, the racism. We know it's there. We've seen it. But all of this will unfold as time goes on. In the meantime, we should commit ourselves to studying what evidence we can gather of the effects of the regime and society, and the effects of the war on the future development in Libya. What I think is important, I know a lot of people who are very much die-hard kind of fans of Gaddafi are going to be very much tempted to completely write off Libya and, the acts of the Libyan people as being a lost cause. And when it comes to the struggle for the working class, the battle never ends, ever, until complete victory. So, it's a struggle that's going to go on. Bear in mind, a lot of people, they may have been fighting for the right reasons, or, they had good intentions when they fought on the side of the rebels, but they had no choice over whether or not NATO was going to join in. And, all we can hope is that they don't let NATO secure too much control. We don't want a kind of a Hamid Karzai type system being set up. There's very much an opportunity for corruption, for cronyism, for terrible opportunism in Libya, and that's one thing that must be fought in order to establish a proper political system there. workers should most certainly concentrate on organising themselves into unions, into worker-friendly parties. I mean, I've got no idea if there are any Marxists in Libya whatsoever, and if so, whose side they were fighting on. I mean, take Syria. There's the two main Syrian communist parties are integrated with the government, but you've also got opposition communist parties fighting against the government. So it's hard to really say for sure. But like I say, we've got to look to the future. And in a way, I'm kind of glad that I didn't just unquestionably buy into, the pro-Gaddafi line at kind of any point. That I retain myself to anti-NATO kind of positions, being critical of the NATO action. Because it's pretty funny. I mean, if you look at, all respect, Maoist Rebel News 2, great videos, really great guy. He does very good work. But you look at his video on Gaddafi, he's wearing his kind of green scarf and stuff, and calling the rebels puppets and, puppets and mercenaries. But if you go back through his videos about 7 months, and you look at his early videos on Libya, and see what he says, and it really does make him look like the puppet. So, but like I say, all his videos are great, but you can retain your principles without selling out, basically. So, I mean, it's obviously difficult from a Marxist position. We're completely opposed to imperialism. We should be completely opposed to despotism at the same time. And I don't believe in looking at things in a black and white perspective. I believe in looking for the truth in the matter. And that's why you don't see me waving a green flag. You don't see me waving the new flag either. So the only flag I wave is the red one. So I'm going to begin researching the Libyan regime. I'm going to try and form some kind of opinion on it, some kind of truthful position on it, make a video. I've got a few other interesting videos coming up anyway. But don't give up on the Libyan people. The chance for them to secure a real freedom from imperialism, from neo-colonialism is still very much there. Gaddafi, the state is irrelevant in the matter. It was pretty much irrelevant as soon as NATO planes started bombing the country. It was never capable of saving them. It never was going to be. So let us now look to the future and keep a close eye on what's going on in Libya. So, red salutes, comrades.